Hello, everyone, and welcome. As I get my presentation started, um, thank you so much for having me here today. And we'll start this off right away. I'll show you credentials of a student, and you will help me analyze it. Um, let's look at this. So the student have moved to US about a year ago and is currently a freshman in high school. She's identified to be an English language learner where she's placed in a slow-paced English classes to learn English. Currently, she's not participating in any extracurricular activities, but she has shown a strong interest in attending a four-year institution upon her graduation from high school. Judging from these credentials, this student has a very low chance of getting into a four-year institution. She simply needs to catch up on English, maybe take a few challenging classes, maybe consider going through a community college. That is a very logical approach to the student's case, a very common approach as well. Considering what we have learned about the student, and how would you describe her? If we were to build a relationship with her and know her a bit better, I think she would come off as very ambitious. Shouldn't we highlight that characteristic more? Well, by the way, that student was me 7 years ago. These are my credentials from freshman year of high school. Let me tell you a little bit about my experience in high school. With support of my teachers, I was able to move from ELL classes to advanced classes by my junior year. Once I figured out how the school system works and what are the different opportunities available, I was able to be part of numerous clubs where I held leadership positions and was captain of the volleyball team, and I served as a student representative on school board and was vice president of my class. That was 2 years ago. So let me show you a little bit what I'm at right now. I'm a junior at James Madison University, where I'm studying political science and economics. I've been serving as senator at Student Government Association since my freshman year. Currently, I'm a Woodson Martin Democracy Fellow with the Center of Civic Engagement at JMU, and I'm also a co-founder of CL First Gen. While juggling all of these professional positions, I'm also a daughter and a sister to an immigrant family. Since I've been away at college, my sister and I have been sharing the responsibilities of what I call the public affairs of our household, where it's getting a call from my sister's teacher to figuring out what's wrong with our taxes this year, which is not a joke. So pretty much anything that requires English. And I want to show you this is what an asset-based perspective can do. What is an asset-based perspective and what is a need-based perspective? Need-based perspective, or also known as deficit perspective, is what usually used to talk about first-gen students. This perspective comes from a negative assumptions. For example, if a teacher teaches kids to save them, that's also what is called a white savior approach. Let me help you because you need this help, when in reality something else the student needs, but isn't able to say anything because they're already predetermined what the student can and cannot do and what they need. Need-based perspective is when one of the counselors told me that I can't attend college because I'm simply an ELL student. An asset-based perspective, on the other hand, is when my teacher that I built a relationship with told me, yes, you can, and you should aim even higher because of your determination. Asset-based perspective is when you look at strength and use these strengths to unlock new doors and look into new opportunities. It is a bit of a different approach in teaching. It's when teacher comes in and says, I'm here to help kids to reach their full potential. I'm their supporter. This approach would allow teachers build stronger bonds with their students that could help them succeed. That is what CL First Gen does. With our network of students, we'll look for their strength to support them in their transition from high school into college and on. We let the students have the power to figure out what they need and what they don't need. We started in 2018, right after graduation from high school. All of us come from different backgrounds. All of us had and have different challenges. All of us have different ambitions. But one thing that we do have in common is being first gen. We all might be first gen, but we all found a different hurdles that we needed to jump over to get where we are right now. From our personal stories, we know that even we are all labeled first gen, we are not the same. Each one of us needed an individual approach and an asset-based approach. This summer, we were able to hold a successful retreat for high school students that was led by students. We let students that have been through these processes dictate what happens. Currently, we have 2 ongoing mentor and mentee programs. We have members that identify that they would like to get mentorship, but we also have members that said that they're ready to be mentors. No first-gen students is alike, but all of them are being assigned similar assumptions. These are characteristics that are brought up through a need-based lens. Not prepared academically, not prepared socially, not prepared financially for college. At the end of the day, it's a big message of not being prepared. Then how so many are still able to do it and are successful? This is only the tip of the iceberg. These are only a few of many strengths that first-gen students show and bring to the table. This is an asset-based perspective. Yes, first gen might not have an extensive network when they start, but we are relationship builders. We seek out those connections ourselves. We're determined to reach our goals. We get creative with our solutions when we hit a roadblock. We're excited for challenges because at the end of it, we'll gain something, whether it's something that we've learned or someone new we've met. And at the end of the day, we want to invest into our communities for the long run. We recognize that one-size-fits-all approach is not effective. You can't make lasting and impactful change with one voice. Bring together multiple voices, diverse experience. Don't use one strength of a single person when you can bring so much more as a group. Today, I'm leaving you all with a task. Find that strength within you, and once you do, use it to elevate others. Now, Brian Kaiser will join me as moderator for the panel up next. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much, Nadia. Wonderful job. That was an incredibly inspiring flash talk. And I'm really excited that Nadia is on our panel today, along with Daniel Fairley, who's the Youth Opportunity Coordinator for the City of Charlottesville, and whose work focuses on Black male achievement, and Ben Allen, the Executive Director for the Equity Center at the University of Virginia. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here and being a part of this panel. Our panel today is framed around the idea, like Nadia talked about, of having an asset-based lens. And we're looking at how do we look at community programming through that asset-based lens. So my first question to the panel is, based on your experiences, what are the qualities of successful programs that create lasting change through an asset-based lens? And if anybody wants to jump in, we'll give everybody a chance to answer the question, and then we'll have some time for some back and forth before moving to the second question.
I can go ahead and get started. So hey everyone again, my name is Daniel Fairley, Youth Opportunity Coordinator, focused on Black male achievement. When thinking about how to have successful programming, and I think that success through an asset-based lens kind of gives you a hint as to what we view as success, right? We view it as the kids and the people that you're working with seeing themselves from an asset-based perspective as opposed to a deficit-based perspective. And so when I hear of a student, or I work with a student who is an English language learner, I think, wow, this student already knows another language and they're learning a new language, right? That's more than what I have, right? The student has experiences that I don't have. And so as a former college admissions advisor, thinking like, wow, there are so many different ways in which I can see the perspective and I can see the benefits of having a student that that already knows multiple languages and is coming into the university. As far as programming goes, I mean, I tell this to students all the time whenever I talk to them. It's all about showing up. So there's three parts, right? There's showing up. So that is coming to the spaces, going to the Boys and Girls Club, working with 100 Black men, working with the different student organizations that you know, and showing up to the organization, showing up to the kids to make sure that they know that you are there. But keep showing up is probably the second point and one of the most important, right? So it's not just the initial opportunity or the initial one-off like type of experience. It's really more about how do we make sure that we are showing these kids that we care, showing these kids that we are committed to their success just as they are committed to their success. And so I think that by keep showing up, I think that is like one of the most important parts because it allows for the kids to see themselves as worthy, see themselves as beneficial to your experience. So by showing up and keep showing up, those are the two parts. And then being authentic is one of the main parts as well. If you know that, like, so for myself, I am a first generation college student, which is exciting, but I also know that I came from a military family, right? Where my dad was not just a retired Marine, but also working for the federal government along with my mom. And so I had a 2-parent income household along with a retirement check from the military. And so I grew up without having to worry about a lot of things that many people would assume a first generation student would have to deal with, right? And so I know that there are privileges and opportunities that come with that. And so I think that for me, it's being authentic with that. When I talk to the kids that I work with, it's being authentic and letting them know this is my background and this is where I'm coming from. How about you? Where are you coming from? Because if there's anything that I've learned from working with middle school or high school students, is that they are 100% like authenticity experts, right? They know whether or not you're being authentic. They know whether or not you have any bit of inauthenticity or any bit of wariness about being with them. They know it right off the bat. And so I think that authenticity, you're showing up and you're keeping up with the experiences and showing up again and again, even when it gets hard. Those are some of the things that I see as valuing their assets and showing them that you care. So those are some of the things that I can think of.
Yeah, I can jump in here. There's so many points that resonated from what Daniel was saying that's really coupled with Nadia's presentation, which Nadia, that was outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I would say the piece that I picked up on was the authentic piece, which ties to what Nadia was saying is so important in relationships. When I see programs that are successful, it really is the programs and individuals that see students from an asset and see it as a partnership rather than they are doing something for them. So many times it's easy to say, oh, this student needs tutoring. Let me go out there and help them, right? And let me go and do this for them. When that's not really what they're looking for. They're looking for someone that can be a partner, a learning partner with them, someone that understands where they're coming from. And as Daniel said, authentic, like honestly, it's just about being real. Kids can see through it better than adults can because they don't have that sort of social barrier that adults sometimes put in place. And they will call you out on it if you are not real with them and you're not authentic. I always say that doesn't have to mean you don't have to come from their neighborhood or you don't have to have their similar experience, but you have to be empathetic and understand some of the things that they are doing. Right? Nadia shared with her story that is so similar to many other students of how they are. I like how she phrased it, the public affairs office for their families, because if we're talking about asset-based language too, even English language learner, we can even flip that to say emergent bilingual students. The asset that they have of a foreign language is just so amazing, right? I consider myself to be an educated individual, but I feel so just not able to par up with someone who can speak 2 or multiple language, right? When I can't have that conversation. And so for them to also be juggling the things that they're supposed to be doing as students to get to that next level of a college education and being able to just to exist in that space is some things that they really need, those relationships and that partnership and the consistency, not something that is just maybe a one-off thing. Like I went and I volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club last Saturday, and that's all I can do. And I can just go back to my own world, right? It's something that you're there. And Daniel made a key point of present. Being present is sometimes all you have to do. You don't have to do anything, but just be there, and they see you, and they see you consistently. So it's something that they see that you are part of their community and not there just trying to, like, you know, to fill your service bucket.
I'll add in a little bit as well. So a lot of times when we say successful programs in our society, it means big numbers. That's not what kids are looking for. We don't look into big numbers. Oh, let me look how big is this organization or how small it is. Most of the time, the small programs are able to fit the needs of students. So to me, it comes down to individualized and relationship building, which Ben and Daniel also echoed. So in individualized, we need to dig deeper into what the student needs. A lot of times with big groups, we do a lot of group collaborations. That's not a bad thing. That's always a great thing, be able to work in a group. But sometimes kids need their individual time. To be able to move to a group setting. We need to have a good balance between individualized and group collaboration. And once again, relationship building is the key, because that's how someone, for example, a first-gen student would be able to open up, or anyone. That's where the key is, relationship building.
Great. And if anybody wants to bounce off any points that were made so far, these are all excellent points. And I love the fact how we're echoing each other, but also bringing more nuance to the conversation based on our own different experiences and what we've done in our work. So feel free to bounce off each other if you have anything you'd like to add that's come up. Otherwise, I can move on to question 2. All right. So when we talk about community partnerships, it's a really complex relationship. We also know that many programs in Charlottesville have come and gone over time. What systemic and organizational barriers prevent programs from really reaching their goals? And Ben, if you want to start off with this question.
Sure. I think the important word in that is the partnership. I know I harped on that the last time I spoke, but I think oftentimes it's easy to start an initiative or support different initiatives that sometimes we operate in silos. We operate in terms of we are serving different student groups or working with student groups or different communities, and a lot of people are operating within that space. I have the optimistic approach sometimes that the intent of each and end of every group is pure. Like, they want to provide students with opportunities, they want to connect with them. But I think sometimes it's really hard because when your head is down and you're in the work, it's really hard to look up and see who else is doing the work with you and how to compare those things simultaneously. And so one of the things that I sort of try to do from this new role that was established just in the past year is how to provide a space that allows that collaboration to knit people together, to have conversations. And it really is just based off of relationships. It takes some humility to not take credit for things, because I think at the end of the day, no one really wants to have like a credit. They don't want to have something that, oh, I did this. It really is about like, what did we do and how do we do these things collectively? In terms of a community partnership, it also means, so like, how do we define community? I think one of the things that I really see beneficial from my role is like being someone who was born and raised in Charlottesville. I went to UVA. I kind of been sitting in this really cool intersection of how do we have a university town of a community? How do we have the community partners, like Daniel works with 100 Black Men and so many other organizations? And then how do we also have the school systems, which are a large part of our community and a critical part of our community? How do we work collectively towards the same goal? And I think the more that we are systematic and strategic about it, the more not only will we be more efficient, but we will also be able to reach the outcomes that we state, right? Every single organization that you see working in this space states a very similar goal. We want better outcomes for students. We want students to flourish. We want this demographic of groups to do better. And if we are working at that individually, then that won't occur. But the more that we are collectively doing it, it will. The last point I'll add to this, that sort of this past 7 or 8 months has shown to us, is the necessity for these groups to work together. I would say half of my day is talking to different leaders and different community members, trying to facilitate different responses to problems that are arising. The lack of access to internet, the lack of access to students being able to have tutoring because everything is virtual, right? It is throwing a kink, obviously, to say the least, in everything. And so it has forced groups to work together, I think, in a positive way, to try to address some of these long-standing issues that we've had in this community.
Thank you, Van. It's important to know that a lot of organizations, whether they're small or big, sometimes feel lost in terms of where to start or where to begin, because there's so many things are out there and it's hard to find a network to get in touch with. From my perspective, we need a single network where we could be able to reach out very quickly, specifically right now in the age where we're so connected into, and this pandemic has shown that even with a lot of challenges, we were able to get over a lot of them. We have a lot of things have moved online, and we're still able to connect with one another, even though sometimes it's a challenge. We just need to remember the ultimate goal of reaching out to one another and be able to be there for one another and be able to help our community. And a community doesn't stop within the lines of Charlottesville or within the lines of the counties. It's reaching out to other schools, it's reaching out to other counties, to other cities, just to be able to provide better resources for students, for people that need it. And that's where the collaboration and being open to collaborate comes in, even during hard times like the pandemic.
Yeah, I love the idea that you're sharing about being able to reach out beyond just our area and being able to reach other areas. Daniel, what do you think about this question? And how do we, come out of these silos?
Yeah, well, I think that it's been really amazing. I mean, so Nadia had pointed this out. And it's funny also that I work with Brian's wife and talking with Candid, which is a community, it's basically the Charlottesville area network dedicated to youth development. This is a community organization where we honestly are trying to get every single youth serving organization together. And we've started this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago at this point, trying to get people together and to work together and to out of their different silos, whether it is something as simple as, hey, community attention over at the Department of Human Services is having a training for Boys Circle, which is a way you can engage young men in difficult conversations. We're going to send this out to the network, and if anyone wants to join, we already paid for it. It actually doesn't raise our price any the amount of people that join, but if you want to come in, you can just email us and we'll send you the link. Or if it is a time like this where there actually is a crisis, we're so thankful that this network is set up, because this allowed for things such as working with the Equity Center, which again has just started with kind of their community collaborations, and started with a new office inside of downtown. But like working with them to then create something, a partnership with the YMCA, right? Where now the YMCA has a local space where kids, they've transformed, rooms that used to be big sweaty hot boxes for stationary bikes are now a classroom, and places where there were basketball games that were happening, now they've taken half the courts, they've created sectioned off spaces for kids to learn. All those things happen because we saw that there was a need for people that were inside the community, that they needed to learn in person, right? There was an opportunity and there was a space that was available with good ventilation, with mask required and everything like that. It was so amazing to see the ways in which our networks have worked together to then be able to say, hey, I know Charlottesville City Schools, I know Albemarle County Schools can't provide the spaces that some of these kids need. How can we use our space to better serve the community, right? And so I've seen that with them. Gym, with YMCA, with the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, so many different ways in which people have been connected. And I will say, I think that for students that are out there that are wondering, like, how do I get connected? How do I get involved? I get emails from students all the time saying, oh my goodness, you work with Black Male Achievement, you're president of the 100 Black Men, let me be involved. I'm only here, you know, for this amount of time, but like, I want to be involved. And oftentimes when you're at that age, I mean, I say at that age, like I'm that much older, but like when you're working in that space, you're wondering like, man, like I want to be in the front lines. I want to have a kid that's dependent on me, that's excited to see me, that smiles in my face every single time that I see him or her. But I think that like, knowing that there's just as much work that needs to be done in the background, right? There's just as much work and that everyone can have their own roles, that it's really nice a lot of times when community directors like myself don't have to do, like we know that we're gonna be here for years and years on end, through the holidays, through the breaks, through summertime. And so knowing that like we have the opportunity to connect and build relationships with these children as well as with their families. And so if we can take some of the other burdens, such as boring paperwork or even doing some research on best practices, things that we always wish that we could do and never really have the time to, knowing that there is a place and an opportunity for students to get involved in that area. Sure, it's not as fun, sure, it's not as hands-on and in your face, but I think that like, recognizing that it's just as needed as the other stuff that we do, right? Because if we're not using best practices, if we're falling behind and using some of the same things we've done since our founding, then we're not really connecting with the kids in the way that they need to, right? If I don't understand that like social media has changed from when my greatest tragedy was having my best friend take me off his top 8 in MySpace, Ben knows what I'm talking about, and then realizing that like kids that I work with now are like, oh my god, my crush just unfollowed me on Snapchat and that is the worst thing in the world. I need to be able to say, wow, I don't know what that means for you, but I'm going to be here and we're going to talk through some of the difficulties, because like we're animated in the way that we love to work with the kids, and we're animated in the way that we love to connect with them. So I think that I'm really excited in the partnerships and the true partnerships that I've seen, and just kind of a, hey, we have a space, hey, we have an asset, what do you need? And I've seen that a lot, especially in the pandemic, because we've been kind of really stripped down to recognizing that our community, we all need each other, right? We're all interconnected and interdependent on each other. And so it's been wonderful to see that then play out into the Equity Center building a website to focus on tutoring and mentorship throughout the community. The YMCA offering up their space. I mean, there's been so many different examples of ways in which communities have come together. But I think that this has been like a really special and unique opportunity for us to live through.
And if
I love the different examples that you're giving here. Oh, I'm sorry, Ben, did you want to jump in?
No, I was just gonna, I appreciated where Daniel was going with that I sort of had that same feeling of it's the energy that people have brought in terms of the outpouring of help, whether it's, you know, monetary donations, physical donations, space donations, all of those, as Daniel stated, were based off of just people connecting those to other individuals. The thing that I always look to is that this energy is here now, and I would love to think that this current operating state is temporary, right? I do believe that there is a other side of this, that we keep that same energy, because those same issues will be there. The lack of access to childcare, the lack of access for families to just have the navigational services to get the support that they need, whether it be from social services, from the government side, the school side, all of those things. The services are there. It's just, how do we get people to it? And how do we bridge that? And how do we do that in a systemic way so it doesn't rely on individual connectors? It should not rely on me calling Daniel to get these things together. Like, how do we just have it? And so we're being preventive rather than reactive, right? And I think that is the key, that how do we, on the other side of this, another great member of Candid, James Pierce, who's the director of the Boys and Girls Club, who has literally flipped his whole operation in a way that has supported this community in an amazing way. He was talking last night, he's like, how do we, on the other side of this, shed the things that aren't working, that were not working, keep the things these are one of the things that are working, this community collaborative, and people care, people are realizing these problems, and how do we drive that to the next phase after this in the recovery period, because we're going to be recovering from this for a while in this community. The last point I'll say to that is that everyone should care about the youth in this town. Even if you don't have a kid, even if you don't have a kid in the school systems, that it is a thing I feel like a lot of people can rally behind. You pay taxes for it anyway, so you might as well care, right? How do we show this as a community goal? That why is it outrageous to say that as a community, we will not allow students to not pass their literacy tests at the end of their third grade year, or we won't allow students in our community, whether it be a 2-year college, 4-year college, going to vocation, military, whatever case, how are we going to say it's okay to stand here and accept all of these disparities that we see? The data is there. It has been studied, researched for decades of the large gaps that are around race and socioeconomics, that we can say as a community, this is unacceptable and we will rally to do this together. But we need a system that allows us to do it. And we need the humility of everyone to sort of pitch in and say, hey, we don't have the answers individually as groups and as members, but collectively we can reach these goals for our students.
That's great. And Nadia, I'd love to pull you in on this to think about creativity and flexibility were two of the big themes that have emerged from this question, and something that I know that you've been really great at incorporating into CVille First Gen. So when we think about creativity and flexibility in building a program, how important do you think that is, and how do you go about using creativity and flexibility?
It's very important in our work because you have students that are coming and going and you want to grab their attention. So creativity is at top right there. But at the same time, you want it to be lasting. And that's the portion that I think we're all struggling with, especially college towns like Charlottesville, and I'm currently in Harrisonburg, where students come in and they want to start something creative, something big, but they're only there for 4 years, and after they're leaving, nobody is there to kind of pick up. So you have a program that had so much potential just fall apart right in front of your eyes. I guess as a society, we need to normalize that even if you are picking up the work that is being left behind, it's still incredible work. And you still are able to use your creativity and bring in your ideas to the table. And you don't necessarily have to start something new for your resume. That's, I think, something that college towns have been struggling with. As someone who's been in Charlottesville City Schools system, and then now I'm at Harrisonburg, and I see Harrisonburg City Schools struggling with the same thing. So yeah.
Thank you, Nadia. And a question we have from the audience that I think it's a great time to throw that out now is, how can we get more community agencies to contribute to this effort?
Can I ask a clarifying question to the question?
Sure.
Community agencies is like community groups, nonprofits, individuals, whoever asked that, if they could. Or I could also just take it from what I think they're asking.
I think it means more like groups, like other programs maybe, and other agencies within the community. Yeah.
Daniel had mentioned this earlier, so I'll throw it in the chat to be able to go to everyone. As something that he said the Equity Center built, we cannot take complete credit for it. I will say one of the staff at the Equity Center, Dr. Sharika Jones-Lewis, did a large lift in consolidating these efforts together. But it really was done in conjunction with Rose Cole at Madison House, who actually, to Nadia's point, has been doing an incredible job of being able to train university students how to work in the community and how it is those long-lasting relationships that we've sort of done as a theme throughout this discussion. and how they do it is not as something, again, this is not a needs based, it is an asset, how you're going to learn just as much from working with community partners as you would have just going in there. But I would say this website, the intent behind it is to answer that direct question, that if you are a community member, community group, and you want to get involved on it, it has the many different groups that are working with youth, that a lot of them actually come from Candide, right? The Candid Network, Abundant Life, Wild Rock, all of these different groups of how to donate your time and how to donate either money too, if that's what you feel compelled to do, and how to get involved with them and how to build those relationships. I always give a plug for teachers right now are, they're incredible. They are literally shifting their entire profession in the span of a few months. And so with that, they're shifting the need for different resources, whether it's sending art kits to their kids so they can do an art lesson or a STEM kit. And so if you look on that, there's a link to Donor Shoes for all the area teachers that have requested, $100, $200 to basically get materials, right? So I always try to put a plug in for that. And I think people often ask me like exactly that question, how do I get involved? It really depends on what your interests are, what your availability is, and being able to go out there and connect with these different groups and different leaders. And I would say the whole point of it is not to just go and say, oh, I donated X amount of money one time, I'm good. Or I went and volunteered two or three times at the PB&J Fund. What all of these organizations, I'm not going to speak on their behalf, but really it's trying to find these long-term partners that are committed, that get to know the students, get to know the families, and that have the longevity of it. So I don't know if Daniel has a better answer for that, but it really is, how do you do these long-term relationships that are authentic and you're doing it as a partnership and not just something to serve?
Yeah, I mean, Ben, I think you touched on a lot of different things. I think I was obviously ditto whatever everything else that you had said. I was trying to think of like real world examples of ways in which people could get involved. Obviously donating is always a great opportunity, whether it is, again, the 100 Black Men that I'm president of, small plug, or if it is other groups that you want to, that again you have a passion for, right? If you live in Prospect and you know that Abundant Life is doing great work, then donating to them, right? Like if you are the YMCA, we just had a call with them. They just said that we actually have a wait list, not because we don't have the space, but because we don't have the staff, right? We have a wait list of kids that would like to be a part of this, but that we don't have the staff to fill. So if you're available during the week between 7:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m., you can email Bonita, who works at YMCA, and she said that she'd be more than happy to go through the vetting process and get you set up to then work with the kids. Let's say that if you're at home, if you're trying to figure out a way in which you can help people out. I'm also on the board for Loaves and Fishes, where we do feeding. We give out tons and tons of groceries, literal tons of groceries every year, and to each family between 40 and 70 pounds of groceries. And so if you are looking for a place to volunteer, that can be a safe place where you can go and pack bags like I do every Thursday, you can go ahead and email Tracy, who works over at Loaves and Fishes, and she is an amazing person, our volunteer coordinator over there. And there's so many different ways, but again, it's like going to the website, it's talking to the people that you know, and if definitely, I mean, like it's a small circle of like executive directors and nonprofit directors and leaders in our community. And so if you know one, then they likely know the other ones. And that's another part of what Candid's mission is trying to connect people and be able to say, hey, Wild Rock, I know that you all have some great outdoor spaces that can be really utilized for students that want to get more connected with nature. We have some students over here at the Music Resource Center, and they want to figure out how they can use the wind and other, natural elements to then make music. Finding those connections and again, knitting those connections together is always a great opportunity. But I want to provide kind of like some concrete things that people just needs off the top of my head out of past conversations that I've had in like the past week of people that do need help, and that there's very concrete ways in which you can help.
That's great. Thank you. I think having these concrete action steps people can take is so important to leave this panel with. So thank you, Ben and Daniel, for giving those concrete steps there. When we look at community programs, overall, the success of a program can look very different based on the goals of the stakeholders and who's involved, right? So when programs often receive strong funding, a certain amount of success is expected, but we also know how subjective that idea of success can actually be. For example, in a program like Seville First Gen, do we measure success by how many students graduate from college, or by how valuable members view the opportunities within the organization, or through a combination of multiple factors? So Nadia, I'd love for you to start this question or the response, but thinking about how can or should we measure the success of community partnerships and programs?
Thank you, Brian. So once again, going to the, it's always nice to see the big pictures, the big numbers. That's what a lot of organizations look for. They want to see a kind of the data behind it. But with with these kind of works, you usually don't get that data. Sometimes it, for example, with Seville First Gen, it's we need to see how valuable our resources are to our members. We have students that take a different path to college, so not exactly graduating from college is our number one measurement. We need to look into whether they are using our resources, or the resources effective, and or is this something that they are interested in. Let them pick and choose, and being open to open up to other partnerships. For example, if something Seville First Gen isn't able to offer at the moment, we can reach out to another community and partner with somebody else, and being able to connect our members with other members, and be able to just get them effective resources that they would be able to use.
Great. Daniel or Ben, would you like to jump in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a great opportunity. You were just talking about ways of collaboration, as far as if I don't have something, knowing that there's others people in other spaces available. So recognizing that, again, there are different assets to different communities. And I think that you going with what you do best is always going to be, the best option. So again, if I'm someone and I'm at the Music Resource Center and I'm working with a kid who likes music, but loves music videos, right? A kid who says, oh yeah, music is great, but I would really love to figure out the production value. Like, how do we get something viral? How do we work with TikTok? How does something kind of kind of emerge in the atmosphere on the internet? And then being able to say, and being able to honestly hold your pride and be able to say, that's wonderful. It sounds like you'd be a great fit over at Lighthouse Studios, right? That is a space in which Lighthouse is one of the only spaces, both in Virginia and in the country, that does youth learning and youth created content, right? They teach kids how to create their own content and tell their own stories. It was a partnership that I used for myself, because I knew that I wanted to tell the story of young Black men. I wanted to be able to say, here is their story. Here are some things that they want to show you. Here are changing the narratives of what you may view a young Black man to be, especially, growing up right now. So I went to Lighthouse Studios. I went to Clarence Green. And I said, can you all help me create a documentary? Can you all help me create an opportunity for these kids to express themselves through this medium? And they did, and we've done it 2 times over. We've had a bunch of different opportunities for the kids to create, and some of them are still working with Lighthouse Studios, which is amazing, because they would have never walked in there had it not been for an opportunity where they needed some work to do. We paid them for an internship through the KIT program, which is the Community Attention Youth Internship Program. And then we allowed them just to kind of create their own narrative and just tell people what they wanted. It was something that I know myself, one of my greatest kind of traits, if you will, is through collaboration and through partnership. And so I use my experience of collaboration and partnership to then connect these kids that were interested in film and interested in art with filmmakers and artists, right? And so being able to be that connector is a big part of my job. Being able to, again, like offer resources that I know of, but that comes through people that I've worked with, right? Opportunities and spaces that I've seen there's a need. And I'm here on a different platform than what I normally am. And I'm able to say, okay, there may be a different audience here that could use this need. There may be a different audience here that says, oh, wow, you know, I actually do have some time in which I could donate one day a week and I could go to the YMCA. So I think that like these are some of the things that I think are so important and so incredible to see how the connections can be made and how we can kind of like keep moving forward. And like Ben said, not just use this for the temporary, not just use this for the now, but also creating these opportunities to then be utilized in the future, because we have an opportunity now like we've never had before. So yes, I'm excited to see the ways in which we can, again, use our own assets and then find other people that have the assets that we don't have and allow them to do that, right? You don't have to be everything to everyone, you can't. And so how do you allow your opportunity and your ego to be set aside for the greater good and the greater opportunity of the people that you work with and alongside?
I appreciate that response and thinking about all the different creative ways that you're able to find new opportunities that might not have existed before. And so, Ben, thinking about what you do at the Equity Center as well, and the way that you work with so many different programs, similar to like how Daniel works with different programs, how do you really gauge a program's success, and what are you looking for when you look at if a program is functioning well or not?
Yeah, I think I think the original question was the success of community partnerships, right? How do we measure that? And I was sitting here thinking, listening to the great points of Nadia and Daniel around when we think of success, I think of like the one group in any area that serves every single student, whether it's good or bad, is the school system, right? And so when I think about every time that you look at any sort of strategic planning within a school system, they have a success measure. It's usually a quantitative data point, right? We are trying to move literacy. We are trying to move more placement of Black students in advanced level classes. Whatever the case may be, they have the sort of expertise to design that, and they set these goals. And so when I think of community partnership success, I see it as inputs into that overall strategic goal, right? I said at the beginning, we have this idea in this area that there is a lot of espoused theory is what I call it. Like we have some stated values that everyone thinks that students should do, should have access to higher level classes. They should have higher achievement. They should have opportunity. The success of community partnerships should be the success of the school district. And how do we facilitate those collaborations? How do we get at the same table to support them? I think there's been good progress towards in both the city and the county of moving towards that, of doing, community talking events, getting community into the strategic planning, getting these community leaders to do that. I think it is a recent trend that hopefully we will see some outputs in the near future in some of this data. But I think overall, the success is not of an individual program. I think that's going back to the silos, like how do we get these community-oriented goals that are supporting the work of the school district and that they are designing? And I think it really is, this is an opportunity as hopefully as we see education as we know it is going to shift, because we are getting assessments are looking completely different. The way that schools are measured of success. How can we as a community get ahead of that and start having these conversations that, as Daniel said, we know the players, right? We know all the groups in this area that are working with different students and what neighborhoods they're working with. How do we use them as an asset to really support that work? And it really takes those connectors to bridge that gap. And I'll end with it. I think it is very clear during this time that a lot has been asked of our school systems historically, and an immense amount has been asked in the 7 months, and they have pivoted to try to address it. But how do we, again, go and keep that same energy to support it? So it's not something, I think it's very easy to point fingers and say, hey, they're not doing this well, right? Or this group's not doing this well. It really is going to take humility on part of the community partners of the school districts to really bridge together, and the university as a higher learning institution, to come together to address these gaps. The resources in this area are immense. It's just that we don't deploy them correctly, and we don't deploy them well. And so how do we do this in a collective way to, again, I go back to the fundamental thing is reaching students, right? And reaching youth. I think, again, it should be an issue that everyone in this town is concerned about, and almost even alarmed about how we are not serving the youth well. Sorry, Brian, I don't know if that answered your direct question, but that's sort of how do we direct those community partner success? I think it really is understanding that, like, the community partnerships of like 100 Black men is not different from the school system, and that we're all youth serving organizations. So how can we bridge those gaps together in a systemic way?
No, I think that's a great point that you're making here. So my question that I'm going to throw back out to everyone is, do we think that we're in a better place now with respect to equity than we were a few years ago? And Daniel, if you want to start us off with that question.
Yeah, wow. It's so hard because I'm thinking in so many ways we can say, yes, absolutely. Like, emphatically, there are kids in places that they never were before. There are opportunities that are given that were literally taken away from kids before, either my generation or generations before me. And so I think that, like, in many ways, we do have access that has increased for the youth that I work with. My position being created after in December of 2017, and the fact that, although coincidental, was not like a byproduct of, like, a response to the riots of August 11th and 12th, right? Like, it just happened to come afterwards, but this work had been going on since prior to this and starting in 2012. So I know that there has definitely been very tangible things that have been created in order to influence, in order to kind of, like, increase equity, right? I think it's been so important, and it's been a conversation that has definitely been, increasing the amount of time that I've been in here. We have so many different ways in which I've led racial caucus groups and different opportunities. I mean, it's been incredible to see both the support for my position as well as the need that people are asking more and more for racial conversations or for gender or sexuality conversations. And I think we have a long way to go, right? I mean, I think there's no way, it's kind of the balance of being excited and happy for the wonderful progress that we've made and saying that's still not enough, right? Being able to say, this is great and we can do better. And so I think that's something that I look forward to, is having everyone begin and to understand that there is more and more opportunities. There are more and more ways in which we can connect, we can build partnerships, we can get everyone in a space, right, where there's community collaboration happening, like Ben said, without even thinking about it. We are just in a space where people are collaborating. They're thinking about, okay, I have this asset, this person has this deficit. How can I work to make sure that I can give them what they need based off what I have? How can I ask for help in spaces that I need help? And so I think that, like, these are all opportunities that are always available to us. I definitely see there's definitely a conversation that's been shifting, and there's always more to be done, right? I mean, I think that my position was created, and I talk about this a lot, just kind of recognizing that with targeted universalism, the idea that you target the people that are harmed most by society, you target the people that have been most impacted by society in a harmful way, and you try to put the resources there, right? You try to make sure that the most amount of resources are put towards the people that are harmed the most. And that then lifts every boat, right? That then allows for people to be a part of a community where we take care of each other, where we look out for each other. And I think that these are all opportunities that continue to grow, and that if anything, what we've seen is a bright light shined on the inequities in our community, right? We've seen that separate does not mean equal. We've seen that there are so many ways in which we can really do better, and we really can focus our equity and focus our influence and our dollars and our resources to the most inequitably resourced parts of our community, and that will then work towards helping everyone, right? And so I think that to me is, it's exciting, it's passionate. I mean, I see so many people that are working towards this, and that is like inspiring for myself. So I think that yes, and we can do better.
And I'll just add the simple answer is yes, because I think it's all relative. Are we better than we were 3 years ago? Yes, because as Daniel stated, people are having conversations about it. His job was created. My literal existence as a job, which I love my job, is because of the inequities, right? And the whole existence of something called an equity center. When we talk about success, I mean, I would like to work myself out of a job, right? Like,
Same.
wouldn't it be great if we didn't always have to go to meetings or have conversations, because the inequities are so great that we are literally have to create, now we are creating systems and institutions to reverse and to redress. We have to keep in mind that in this area, the inequities that are in place were intentionally designed. They were intentionally designed. Lines were drawn physically, right, in city blocks. People were prevented from moving to certain areas because of the color of their skin. And we are maybe one generation removed from that, right? I mean, I am a first generation college student. My family has lived here since the 1840s. That's as far back as I can trace it, right? And I am the first generation college student. My office, as Daniel stated earlier, is right across from First Baptist Church on West Main Street. I'm literally looking out the window right now of the Star Hill neighborhood. It used to be a predominantly Black neighborhood, right? This is where my family grew up. The university that was less than a mile down the road was unattainable to them, right? We have to, if we are going to look for progress, and we have to wake up as a community and have to stop pretending that these problems were not already here and they're not going to continue to go here. And again, it's like that collective effort of being able to address them and have some honest conversations about what we really value. The resources are here, they're plentiful, right? It's just a matter of how we strategically deploy them and really hold ourselves accountable to this.
And that's a great point. And Nadia, I'd love to hear, thinking about your work through CHS and everything that you did as you were involved there, and as you've been involved so much at JMU, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on this.
Yeah, thank you. I'll echo what Daniel and Ben have said so far. Yes, we have improved, but there's still, there's always room for improvement. Specifically with the pandemic, we have seen how communities are still struggling to provide for themselves, and we have more opportunities, but in a way we're kind of stagnant. We haven't changed enough. So as my experience as an ELL student, where it was extremely different, it felt, even though we were in the same school, I kept getting different experience from my peers just because we were in different classes. And it was just a few years ago, and it has stayed the same. Some of my peers that are still in ELL students, they're still getting very different experience from the same education system than I do. For example, one of the big things is like standardized testing, and how we're measuring pretty much everyone the same way, where it definitely it's not fair for everyone. So there's always room for improvement. And with these community programs, we're hoping that we will be closing that gap with each year and with each month.
Nadia, that's a great point that you make there. And looking at the time now, it's 4:59. First, I just want to thank everybody for your incredible insights and bringing your different experiences and into this panel and really giving us a great look into what community program within Charlottesville looks like, as well as what it should look like through creativity, through collaboration, through having an asset-based mindset. I think the perspectives here are a blueprint for what successful programming can look like. So I want to thank everybody for being a part of this panel. At this point, Ben would like to come back in and give some closing remarks.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, the marketing manager here at TomTom. Hi, Daniel. I want to thank you all for taking the time with us today. This was such an important conversation, and thank you so much for being a part of it. Daniel mentioned the Lighthouse Studio project he worked on with Black Male Achievement, and I dropped that link in the chat if you'd like to see it. We have 2 more panel conversations tomorrow around issues of equity in K-12 education, where we will hear from thought leaders in the space and educators working on the ground floor. We'd like to thank the UVA School of Education and Human Development for their support and collaboration in building this program. And as a reminder, all Cities Rising events are pay what you can thanks to the support of our sponsors and community members like you all. So if you enjoyed today's program, we invite you to become a contributing member to the foundation. And with that, thank you all again and see you soon. Bye.